Are you looking to expand your aesthetic practice and attract high-quality new patients? Discover the power of digital marketing in growing your practice with a personalised strategy session. Schedule your meeting with Ryan today by visiting www.businessofesthetics.org/MSM and take the first step towards transforming your practice with the potential of digital marketing.
You're invited to join our exclusive monthly webinar brought to you by the Business of Aesthetics community. Don't let this chance slip through your fingers. Secure your spot now for a game-changing experience. Register for free on our homepage at www.businessofesthetics.org and get set to transform your strategies.
Welcome to another episode of the Business of Aesthetics podcast, brought to you by our gold sponsors, Equa Marketing. Today, we're excited to hear from Naren Arulrajah. Over to you, Naren.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to another captivating installment of the Business of Aesthetics podcast. I am Naren Arulrajah, your co-founder and co-host at the heart of the Business Aesthetics community and podcast. Before we immerse ourselves on today's episode, I want to express my profound gratitude to all of you, our incredible listeners and members of our communities in the US and obviously across the world. Your willingness to embrace and share this podcast and your invaluable insights and questions and experiences is what makes us who we are today. Thanks again for all your support. You have a treat today, and the topic I'll be covering is MedSpa Dream Team, how to build yours. And my guest to help me explore this topic of MedSpa Dream Team, how to build yours, is Kim Burke. Kim is a founder of a startup practice that went from single injector to a multi-million-dollar practice. Kim, welcome to the Business of Aesthetics podcast show.
Great. Thank you. I appreciate it.
Before we really go into the depths of, MedSpa Dream Team, tell us a little bit about yourself. You started out as a single injector and then built a multi-million-dollar practice. So tell us your story. When did you first, get into, this field, aesthetics, and then tell us your journey. Give us some high-level dates, like years, perhaps.
Sure. So let's see. I became a family nurse practitioner and was working in family practice, and I really kind of wanted to always dip my toes into aesthetics, and found that life kind of got in the way. So, my kids were little, I was, going to grad school, I was working full time, finally got out of grad school, and, kids were still little, getting adjusted to, being a nurse practitioner. So having a new role. And so I kind of let that settle for a little bit. And then after that, I was like, I think I can handle a little bit more. So I kind of took it upon myself in 2017 to take some courses and just kind of learn about the aesthetic industry, learn how to inject with no really thought as to what the future would hold, because to me, I was always going to continue to work at my job, and this was always just going to be kind of like a side gig. I took a course, and that course was a little bit of a nightmare. It was extremely large, and I kind of left there more confused than I came in at. And, my takeaway from that was, yes, I do want to get into aesthetics, but this is not the kind of environment that I feel like is helpful for me personally to learn. And, just talking to others within the course as well, that they felt the same way. So, that I kind of remembered that. And I was like, if I ever do decide to get into this, and eventually teach, like, I would like to do things different. So, that first course just kind of, was a springboard to, course after course after course. And, it kind of just blossomed from there organically.
Perfect. So you started, when did you think you made your first hire?
Well, so that's interesting because I was still working full time at my current job. And my best friend at the time, she is an accountant CPA by trade. And she asked me, who do you have doing your books? And I was like, I'm really, really organized. I have all my receipts. I don't really think I need to like have someone take care of my books. And she was like, well, why don't you just have me take a look? And I was like, okay, fine. So she spent like an entire day kind of setting up, QuickBooks for me. And I was like, oh, I didn't even realize I needed that kind of stuff. So she was my first hire, and she was just doing it part-time. And she still also had another full-time job. And that was, as a CPA with another firm. And so that was in 2018 when I hired her. But once again, it was just very part-time.
When is your full-time hire?
First full-time hire, I would say, was 2019, and that was her. We got to the point where I needed her to either, things were busier and I needed more help and assistance. So she was at a point where she either needed to quit her job and work full-time for me, or we needed to find somebody else to fulfill that role. So that's what we ended up doing, was that she ended up quitting her full-time gig and then coming on full-time with me.
Makes sense. So coming back, your practice today, how big is it? Collections, team members, what kind of services you provide, just so that we can paint a picture for our audience as to what the end game could look like.
Sure. So once again, I started just a single injector. So it was just me. I was renting a room in a salon suite, and basically had very low overhead. I was doing my own scheduling. I was doing my own POS, marketing, social media. It was just me kind of doing all of that. And let's see, then I ended up opening a second location. And that second location was closer to my house. My first location was more of where I grew up. And those locations are about like 35 miles from each other. And between the two of those locations, I was kind of going back and forth. And I specifically remember one of my employees at the time, who's also I ended up hiring a lot of friends. I also hired another one of my friends, and she was doing more of kind of like back end stuff for me, booking clients, answering phones as needed, just on a very part-time basis. And I remember her telling me when I was on vacation, like it was July, and she was like, you have 35 people on your wait list, and you're going to end up losing them because they will go elsewhere. They're not going to wait. So that to me was kind of like, oh, wow. All right, I need to do something or I'm going to lose some of these patients. So that was when I hired my first injector. She's been with us for 4 years. So I'm going to say that was like 2020. She just had her 4-year anniversary. And she was actually my client. And that's how I found her. I knew she was, obviously a nurse, and I just saw something in her, and I thought that she would be a really good fit. And I knew she was a hard worker and motivated and a little hustler. So we just kind of had that conversation of, is this something you'd want to do? And, obviously she was working in the hospital. She had 0 injection experience, and she was like, yeah, this is something I'm interested in. And it kind of started from there. So we've had her for 4 years, and right now our team, we're made up of about, I would say like 19 to 20 people. So we have 2 locations, about 19 to 20 staff members. I was very much just very heavy into the injectables. And it wasn't until, a couple of years later, when I was talking to my patients and finding out that things like lasers and microneedling were something that I wasn't sure that I necessarily needed. And I was finding that they were getting it, and they were just getting it at other places. So to me, that was kind of my cue to, okay, I need to offer these services because I don't want to run the risk of losing them. So then we ended up bringing on lasers, medical grade skincare, so each of our locations, we have a hydrofacial, we have skin pen, we have the Silfirm X at either of the locations. We also have a Candela Gentle Max Pro at one location, and we have the Cyton M Jewel, which is the BBL Moxie, at the other location. So, we pretty much can do everything at either location so that there's not an inconvenience for our patients to drive.
Absolutely. So let's kind of get into the nuts and bolts. One thing you mentioned that kind of caught my attention is you said you ended up hiring a lot of friends.
Mhm.
My experience is that's typically like, doesn't work out well. At least that's
Yeah.
my experience. So I've avoided it like a plague. Either I never did it or did it very rarely, and it's like a self-fulfilling prophecy because I never really went down that path.
Yeah.
But so tell me, I mean, it might have worked. It's just that I was afraid of doing it, so I didn't do it.
Yeah.
So tell me why you felt it worked for you. Like, what were the reasons it worked for you, or mostly worked for you?
So, yeah, that's kind of the golden rule, right? They always say, don't do business with your friends. And, I was obviously aware of that, but I knew that they had very similar kind of mindsets as me and could see my vision. And not only that, but they could also see my will to make this work. Because when I decided I was going to leave my full-time job and do injecting, full-time, and, I had a great job, fabulous benefits. In my head, I thought I was going to retire from that company. And here I am, quitting and going off on my own and starting this new venture. And I went into it with the mentality of I refuse to fail and this is going to work. And so it was my blood, sweat, and tears. And I think that they could see my drive and my motivation. And so it just was kind of like a natural, do you need help with anything? Is there anything I can do? And, I did. And I was like, yes, I was very protective over what I had built. And I wasn't ready to just train somebody else or, let somebody else in on what I had worked so hard to create. So to me, it was like safer. But having said that, people have nightmare stories. I've been very, very lucky. All of the friends that I've hired are still there. They're all in different roles. One is my practice manager. She's my CPA. The other one is our medical assistant, since she does a lot of like back end office. And we have another one of my friends does client retention, and they work. I mean, it's working for us. So having people that are within the circle or within friends of friends or referrals has worked really, really well for us.
Okay. So, I guess your secret is, if you were to give me like 2 bullet points or 3 bullet points in making this work.
I would say making sure that, your friends are aware that at the end of the day, this is still a business and we have to be profitable, and, tough decisions need to be made. And as long as they are okay with having those difficult conversations, because it can get, a little awkward sometimes when it's like, well, I want to raise, or you're not performing to standards, or, what's going on in your life, and, why are you off, and what's happening? Those are uncomfortable conversations to have with people in general, let alone having it be somebody close to your heart that knows your family and your friends and your, comes to your house. And so it wasn't honestly that difficult to navigate.
Okay.
Just because I think that we are like-minded individuals anyway, and the fact that they kind of trusted me in the process and could see that this journey was actually going to work and was going somewhere. And they have also become very protective and feel as if it's their own, because they feel it's very near and dear to their hearts.
Right. Let's kind of go back to the mistake you made in hiring. Of course, you don't have to give us the name or when it happened, but what do you think you did wrong? Again,
Um,
just give me like bullet points and then we'll go in depth.
okay, so I think that when hiring, you know, we've changed the process a little bit. The last couple hires that we have brought on, we have had the like our newest esthetician, she probably interviewed with 7 people, and I'm not exaggerating, on our team, just because we have a lot of different personalities, and what I may think is checking all the boxes and is great, somebody else can see things from a different perspective and bring up, well, okay, yes, but does this person work well with others, and are they going to be motivated and self-driven, and are they going to be active on social media, and are they entitled, or do they think things should just be handed to them and their schedule just automatically filled and they don't have to work and hustle, and there's just a lot of facets. And I think that we of course do the 90-day trial period, and I honestly feel like it should be longer, because 90 days, I think you can still kind of quote unquote fool somebody as to what your intentions are and whether or not you are a good fit for that culture. But all in all, I think it just goes down to, it's usually my practice manager and myself, and we've definitely made mistakes. And I think the biggest thing is getting rid of whatever the bad apple is sooner than later. If it's consuming a lot of my time, like if an employee is consuming a lot of my time and a lot of my thoughts, and that is making me less productive in other areas, that's a red flag. And I had to learn that the hard way, because it's like, once you realize that that is something that needs to go, whether that person, that employee needs to go, or you need to put them on, a PIP, performance improvement plan or something like that. Once that's addressed, it's like a huge weight lifted off me. And that's something that I tend to I've carried around that too long. When I have those feelings, I need to address it, and decisions need to be made. Right. As opposed to holding on. Well, let's give her another chance. Let's just, keep going and take our chances with it. Like, if it's consuming my time and my energy and my thoughts, it's probably something that needs to be taken care of and trim the fat.
Makes sense. You mentioned a lot of things that I think would go in a job description, right? Hey, you have to post on social media. Is this person entitled? Is this person, willing to work with others, and so forth and so forth. Do you have a clear job description for every job? And then
No,
no, you don't. Okay.
not at
So how
all.
do you get everybody, like you said, 7 people interviewed her, right? How do you get
Yeah.
everybody on the same page as to what exactly they should be looking for?
So I think that, the key people that we've had interview recently are aware of, like, and it sounds so cliche about like our mission and our values and our vision, but in our culture, but that truly is something that I feel very protective of, as far as, the vibe. When people come into either of the locations, I want them to feel, wow, that was fun. Like I could be friends with these people. I enjoyed my experience, even though we're doing things that may not be the most pleasant, like putting needles in their face or getting some, a laser, or doing something that could be potentially uncomfortable. I still want them to leave and say, wow, I really enjoyed that. And I want so-and-so to come here because it was such a great experience for me. And then, that just builds referrals after referral, whether it's a friend or a family member. And, we highly encourage, that's the majority of our business is word of mouth referrals. We don't do, we don't do like paid ads on Google. We don't spend money in those areas. A lot of the referrals and our incoming new clients are organic.
Right. Looking back, I'm switching gears here. Looking back at your success, you went from, somebody who has never done this before, literally you did it, for yourself right from the start. If you were to go back and tell your younger self things you would do differently and things you really will double down on. So let's start with things you would double down on. Like, what advice would you double down on that you would give yourself? Like, let's go through like different buckets. So maybe marketing, HR, having a team of, like accountants, etc. Like, give me like a few things you would tell you.
So things that I probably would have, to me, I guess I try to look at, there's no, anything that is a shoulda, woulda, coulda is a learning experience. It happened for a reason. So I don't have regrets, I would say, really with anything, even when we've had, employees that we've had to terminate because they were stealing or, terrible things that have happened. Like when I look back at it, I'm like, okay, I learned from that experience and now I know, and I have grown from it. And now I know X, Y, and Z, whether it's to have a tighter control on your inventory or, cameras that are, inside the offices, inside the office where we keep our products, and those things, because obviously inventory is a huge cost. That's a huge amount of money that could potentially be walking out daily and you wouldn't necessarily notice. So just having a tight control on that, and like I said, I don't really have a whole lot of regrets. I wish I had more of a business background. I'm clinical. I'm a nurse practitioner. I have not taken any business courses. My son is in college right now and he's getting his business degree. And I'm like, well, I'm really happy one of us in this family has gone to business school because mama hasn't. But yeah, it's just, that has been really hard for me to navigate, honestly, is the business standpoint. Once I got to the point where I was comfortable enough to, manage complications, a bad review, an upset client, or, something clinically I felt confident with. But when it came to the business standpoint and navigating that and managing people, that to me was really, really scary. One of the things that I did over the course, like basically last year, was I kind of took that role and I said, okay, I don't feel comfortable in this role at all. So I am going to immerse myself in management and leadership kinds of workshops and classes and books and podcasts and all the things, because I just really felt uneasy because it was just a lack of knowledge. And then once I started to kind of gain those skills, I was like, I was making this way more complicated than it needed to be. Like, this is not difficult. I just needed the confidence to tell me, kind of like that roadmap of like, this is how people are going to be motivated and engaged as an employee. And as an employer, these are the things that you need to do in order to create that kind of environment. So that it was just a learning experience. And, if I had one thing to like tell any business owner or anybody who runs a team, whether they're in aesthetics or any other field, is that treat your employees with care, with love, with respect. I mean, financially and just personally, and get to know them and be friendly, because I really truly think that trickle down of retention with employee retention trickles down and naturally becomes client retention. Because if they're there, if my employees are there and they're happy and they're enjoying their work and they feel like they have a purpose and they are part of the team and they have a voice, that's going to show in the everyday in, day out, even whether I'm there or not. The face of the business is that they are invested and they're happy. And then that in turn makes happy clients. And then it just is a trickle down. So that's probably one of the biggest. And once again, it's very simple, right? That's not difficult. Create an environment that your employees actually want to be at work at. It's not a hard thing. And it trickles down. It really, truly does.
Makes sense. You mentioned a few things I want to just ask you quick questions on. One is you use the word culture. So describe to me how you would describe your culture.
So I think that overall it's a very honest and welcoming culture. I think that when I say honest, I think it comes from both sides. It comes from us being honest to our clients and us, and me being honest to my staff members. I also think that creating a culture where people feel empowered and confident, whether that be once again on the client side or on the employee side. Once you have a voice in something, and once you feel like you are invested and actually people are listening to you and you're making a difference, that just really creates something that creates that sense of empowerment with like, wow, I really am doing something that is making a difference here. And then in turn, your clients want to come. They want to be a part of that. The culture, I think, to me is something that is extremely important because, like I said before, honest, being humble, being authentic, and creating that confidence in the person.
Right. I just want to leave our listeners with two tips. One tip is you talked about once I knew how to handle complications. So explain to me, how do you handle complications?
So, okay, so complications. So whether it's, if we're talking like a tox complication, or if we're talking of like a filler complication or a biostimulator complication, a laser complication, we have all sorts of complications, unfortunately. Honestly, I get involved in all of the complications personally because I want the client to know that, number one, I understand what's going on. Number two, I'm going to do everything in my power to make sure that it's okay. And number three, that they're not alone in this. So, basically complications. So, if they saw a different provider and they weren't happy, I will reach out to them, whether it's, over the computer, social media, phone call, meeting them in person, whatever is the easiest for them, I will do. And just to tell them that this is, if it's a complication, like these things happen. It's just kind of like driving a car. You could be the best driver in the world, but accidents happen, and, we strive for safety and amazing results. And, even though we as providers we know our anatomy inside and out, anatomy can be variable. And just because, one person's anatomy is very similar to what textbook is and the next person's is not, like, we take that with, we know that, and we don't have x-ray vision and we try our best, but things happen. So, just navigating through that, once again, making sure that they know that I'm there for them, that we will see through. I mean, one of the first vascular occlusions I had was a nurse, of course. And so she totally knew what was happening. And when I saw what was going on, and when I think back of what happened, it's like there was no reason, there was no rhyme or reason as to why she ended up getting a vascular occlusion, and it was in her lip. I mean, I recognized that we were able to reestablish blood flow. She had no, adverse events after that. We followed her, closely. And then a couple of weeks later, we ended up refilling her. It was totally fine. But just for the fact of recognizing it, I grabbed my medical assistant and I said, hey, grab that iPad and follow me. And she was like, what? She didn't know what was happening. I said, grab the iPad and just start recording. And she's like, okay. So, and I did that because I wanted to be able to look back and see what I could have learned and what I could have done better, number one. And I also wanted to use that for a learning experience for future. So like I have a clip of that and I play that. So I do trainings, I do group trainings within our practice. And I play that in my practice as a learning experience because a lot of people they don't know in real time what to be looking for and how to manage it. And, I'm like, get the aspirin, get the warm packs. now I'm mixing up, I'm adding all my Hylenex together, and I'm adding a little bit of Lido, and I'm flooding the area, and now I'm massaging. Now we're doing, and I just was kind of walking through everything that I was doing. And I found that to be really helpful, not only for myself to kind of look back on, but also for, newer injectors as well.
Perfect. Thank you for that. I really appreciate your time today. And any final thoughts as we bring this to a close, Kim?
I would just say that always be kind, whether or not, every industry can be very competitive, and as more and more people are wanting to get into aesthetics, and it seems like there's places popping up, on the corner, this corner and that corner, and all over now. And at the end of the day, if you can, even though they may be your quote unquote competition, just be kind, because you never know when you're going to run into these people again, whether they're clients. You never want to burn a bridge, personally or personally or professionally. So, just be kind. Always be kind. And that's what I tell my children too. Just be kind. And that's just a nice kind of life hack. Always be kind. Respect for self, respect for others, and responsibility for your actions. All will be good.
Thank you so much, Kim. I really enjoyed our conversation. I learned a lot. It obviously shows you're somebody who pays attention to what's happening instead of just going through motions. And you, like you said, everything is either a win or a lesson. You learn from it. So
absolutely
go the way you want. So that's a wonderful perspective on life. And I think it shows why you are so successful. You don't get easily rattled. You don't get, you keep marching forward one step in front of the other. So that's awesome. And I think the other points you mentioned about confidence and how that's critical, right? Because the more confidence you have, the bigger your dreams can be and the bigger things you can attempt. So you touched on really, really important things. It took me 20 years to figure out. You figured it out in like 4. So kudos to you.
Well, thank you. I appreciate it.
I also want to take
so much.
You're very welcome. I also want to take a minute to thank our listeners. We appreciate all of you. We cannot do what we do without you. So if you like this podcast, please share it with your friends and colleagues, email, social media, you name it, whatever works for you. Also, please don't forget to write a review for us either on iTunes or Google Music. Your thoughts will help other doctors and practice owners find us. Till we meet again, I wish all of you an amazing week ahead.
Great. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Kim. I'll have my team follow up with you and share the clips and or the podcast. So perhaps you could also share it on your social media.
Of course.
And I'll ask them to see if there's anything else we can do together, to kind of expand on this relationship.
Okay. Absolutely. Happy to help.
Thank you so much.
Thank you for joining us this week on the Business of Aesthetic podcast series, brought to you by our gold sponsor, Equa Marketing. Would you like to join our growing group of aesthetic industry experts and get featured on the Business of Aesthetics podcast? Or do you know someone who would love to share their strategies for growth in the aesthetic business, providing quality patient care, or their clinical expertise? Head over to www.businessofesthetics.org podcast show and apply to be featured as a guest on the show. Remember to subscribe to this podcast on iTunes, Google Play, Amazon Music, or wherever you listen. If you would like to engage with today's speakers or any of our past speakers, join our Facebook group or LinkedIn group by searching for Business of Aesthetics. Thank you, and have a great day.